Clinical Oncology Series Part 3 Cancer Screening, Diagnosis and Staging by Clinical SWOT. Today's contents are Cancer Risk Assessment, Cancer Screening, Cancer Diagnosis, Cancer Staging and Tumor Markers. The first is Cancer Risk Assessment. In the Cancer Risk Assessment, mainly this starts with taking a complete history that includes environmental exposure to potential carcinogens and a detailed family history. The risk assessment for breast cancer, for example, includes obtaining family history to determine whether another member of the family is known to carry breast cancer susceptibility gene, or whether there is familial clustering of breast cancer, ovarian cancer, thyroid cancer, or any other tumors or cancer like endometrial cancer, brain tumors, dermatologic manifestation, or leukemia or lymphoma, and also to know if the patient is from Ashkenazi or Jewish descent. Then patients who do have a strong hereditary component of the risk can be evaluated on the basis of age, the race of patient from which it belongs, personal history of the patient, and exposure. One of the most commonly used models for risk assessment of breast cancer is Gale model. This model uses risk factors such as individual's age, age at menarche, age at the first live birth, number of first degree relatives with breast cancer, number of previous breast biopsy specimen. In this Gale model, it mainly underestimates the risk of women who have already had a diagnosis of invasive or non-invasive breast cancer and does not take into account a specific mutations which predispose to breast cancer, that are BRCA1 and BRCA2 mutations. Then there is lung cancer prediction model, which includes age, sex, asbestos exposure, history of smoking. These all are used to predict the risk of lung cancer. Then screening for common cancer using non-invasive tests is expected to lead early diagnosis and allow more conservative surgical therapies, which decrease the morbidity and potentially improve the surgical rates and overall survival rates. Mainly, the screening guidelines are developed considering the general baseline risk population. For example, more intensive colorectal cancer screening is recommended for individuals who are at increased risk because of the history of adenomatous polyps, or which have with the patients who have FAP or who had FAP, or the patients who have or had Lynch syndrome before, or a personal history of colorectal cancer, or a family history of either colorectal cancer or colorectal adenomas before the age of 60. Or for example, breast MRI is recommended as an adjunct to mammography for the breast cancer screening in the BRCA mutation carriers, first degree relatives of carriers, and women with lifetime breast cancer risk of 20% to 25% are higher chances to go under the breast MRI or mammography. Then there is cancer diagnosis. A definitive diagnosis of solid tumors is obtained by performing a biopsy specimen of the lesion. This biopsy specimen mainly give us the tumor histology and grade, and thus they assist in definitive therapeutic planning. Biopsy specimens of mucosal lesions are obtained endoscopically via colonoscope, bronchoscope, or cytoscope. Lesions who are palpable are excised or are diagnosed with the help of punch biopsy specimen, or the deep-seated lesions which can be localized by CT scan or ultrasound guidance. Then there is fine needle aspiration and core needle aspiration. Fine needle aspiration mainly gives the information of tissue architecture. For example, fine needle aspiration biopsy specimen of breast mass can make the diagnosis of malignancy, but cannot differentiate between the invasive and non-invasive tumors, which is done in the core needle biopsy specimen. So the core needle biopsy specimen mainly allows us to histologic findings. The core needle biopsy specimen, like fine needle biopsy, is safe and can be performed either by direct palpation or by guided imaging study. Then there is open biopsy specimen, which have an advantage of providing more tissue for histologic evaluation, but its disadvantage is it is an operative procedure. Then there is incisional biopsy specimen and excisional biopsy specimen. This incisional biopsy specimen are reserved for a very large lesion in which definitive diagnosis cannot be made by needle biopsy specimen. And in the case of excisional biopsy specimen are performed for lesions for which either core biopsy specimen is not possible or result. Then there is cancer staging. Staging systems mainly include clinical prognostic factors such as tumor size, location, extent, grade, and dissemination to regional lymph node or distant metastasis. So, cancer staging is a middle stage in which, after the cancer is diagnosed and before the cancer treatment is started. So, cancer staging mainly leads us to which kind of treatment is necessary to the patient. So, this cancer staging is done mainly by two ways, that is PET scanning or CT scan. Most commonly, PET scanning is performed with fluorine 18, which is incorporated into fluorodeoxyglucose, that is FDG. FDG PET mainly assesses the rate of glycolysis. FDG uptake is increased in the most malignant tissues, but it is also increased in benign pathologic conditions such as inflammatory disorders, trauma, infection, and granulomatous diseases. Then there is a staging system through which the cancer can be staged. That is TNM staging system. Mainly in the TNM, T stands for primary tumor or the size of the primary tumor. N stands for presence or absence of extent of nodal metastasis, and M stands for presence or absence and extent of distant metastasis. So T stands for tumor size, N stands for nodal metastasis, and M stands for distant metastasis. Then there is another type also known as clinical staging, also called CTNM, which is based on the information gained up until the initial definitive treatment. Then there is pathologic staging, which includes clinical information and information obtained from pathologic examination of the resected primary tumor and regional lymph nodes. And then there is ATNM, which is autopsy TNM, and RTNM, which is recurrent TNM. Then comes tumor markers. Tumor markers can be of two types, that is prognostic or predictive tumor markers. What is tumor markers? Tumor markers are the substances that can be detected in higher than normal amounts in the serum, urine, or tissues of the patient with certain types of cancer. Tumor markers are mainly produced by either cancerous cells themselves or by body in the response to cancer. The first type is prognostic marker, which predicts the disease-free survival, disease-specific survival, and overall survival. And what is predictive marker? Predictive marker is often used in context of predicting the response to certain therapies. These predictive markers are markers that can prospectively identify the patient who will benefit from certain therapy, which means they predict in which patient which kind of therapy should be given. For example, in the case of breast cancer, estrogen receptor ER and HER2 assessment can identify the patient who can benefit from anti-estrogen therapies. So we should see if the patient or breast cancer is estrogen receptor positive breast cancer or estrogen receptor negative breast cancer, which can benefit us from giving anti-estrogen therapies, that is tamoxifen. And we should also assess about the HER2. So we can give the HER2 targeted therapies like trastuzumab or pertuzumab or any other medications or trastuzumab. Then there is serum markers. The serum markers, the first is prostate specific antigen PSA. It is produced from androgen regulated serine proteases produced from the prostate epithelium. So PSA is mainly produced from the prostate epithelium, and PSA levels can be elevated in the blood of man with benign prostate conditions such as prostatitis and benign prostatic hyperplasia, as well as man with prostate cancer. Then there is carcinoembryonic antigen, that is CEA, which is found in the embryonic endodermal epithelium. Elevated CEA levels can be seen in the patient with cancer of breast, lung, ovary, prostate, liver, and pancreatic cancer. CEA can also be elevated in benign conditions like diverticulitis, peptic ulcer, bronchitis, liver abscesses, alcoholic cirrhosis, especially in smokers and elderly persons. CEA measurement is also commonly used in the management of colorectal cancer. The CEA level are elevated also in the case of primary colorectal cancer as well. CEA measurement is most cost-effective approach for detecting the metastasis. So the first step in the detection or diagnosis of colorectal cancer should be the measurement of CEA. In the cases in which patient would be a candidate of resection of recurrent colorectal cancer or systemic therapy, the ASCO guidelines recommend that post-operative CEA testing patient with stage 2 or 3 disease for at least 3 years. Then there is alpha-fetoprotein, also called AFP. It is produced by developing fetus. An elevated level of AFP suggests the presence of either primary liver cancer or germ cell tumor of ovary or testicles. Rarely, other types of cancer such as gastric are also associated with elevated AFP, but it is rare. Benign conditions such as cirrhosis, hepatic necrosis, acute hepatitis, chronic active hepatitis, ataxia telangiectasia, Wiskott-Aldrich syndrome, and pregnancy can also lead to elevated AFP levels. The current recommendations are to screen healthy hepatitis B virus carriers with annual or semi-annual measurement of AFP level, and to screen carriers with cirrhosis or chronic hepatitis and patients with cirrhosis of any etiology or any cause with twice yearly measurement of AFP level and ultrasonography. So the patient with hepatitis B virus carriers should be screened annually or semi-annually, and the patient with cirrhosis, chronic hepatitis should be screened twice yearly, means 2 yearly. Then there is cancer antigen 19-9. Based on the ASCO guidelines, there are not sufficient data to recommend the use of cancer antigen 19-9 for the screening and diagnosis, but it is also used in pancreatic cancer screening. Then there is cancer antigen 15-3, which is an epitope of large membrane glycoprotein encoded by MUC1 gene that tumor cells shed into the bloodstream, and it is used in the treatment in women who are diagnosed with advanced breast cancer elevated in early stage of breast cancer, in the benign conditions such as chronic hepatitis, tuberculosis, sarcoidosis, pelvic inflammatory disease, and many other conditions. Cancer antigen 27-29. Cancer antigen 27-29 levels can be elevated in breast cancer as well as in the cancer of colon, stomach, kidney, lung, ovary, pancreas, uterus, and liver. First trimester pregnancy, endometriosis, benign breast cancer, kidney disease, and liver disease also may be associated with elevated cancer antigen 27-29 levels. Then we have bone marrow macrometastasis. Macrometastatic disease in the bone marrow is also referred to as minimal residual disease. This bone marrow macrometastasis disease usually is detected by staining bone marrow aspirates with monoclonal antibodies to cytoskeleton. And breast cancer patients with bone marrow macrometastasis have larger tumors. So the tumors with higher histologic grade and more lymph node metastasis, and more hormone receptor negative tumors than patients without bone marrow macrometastasis. So the breast cancer patient with bone marrow macrometastasis have larger tumors, higher histologic grade, more lymph node metastasis, and hormone receptor negative. And bone marrow macrometastasis has been evaluated in other tumors which include gastric, esophageal, colorectal, cervical, and ovarian cancers also. Thank you. Clinical SWOT signing off. Stay tuned, study hard.